I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the One Infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 32.1. Questioner, I have a question that I will throw in at this point from Jim. I will read it. The instrument's physical vehicle is now in the process of recovery from the ingestion of a chemical. She was ignorant of the opening that she was creating. How may the three of us present be more aware of how such openings may be created in our actions and our thoughts? Is it possible that we can make such openings innocently as we question in different areas during these sessions? And what can we do to protect ourselves from negative influences in general? Are there any rituals or meditations that we can do to protect ourselves? Answer, I am Ra. Although we are in sympathy with the great desire to be of service exemplified by the question, our answer is limited by the distortion of the way of confusion. We shall say some general things which may be of service in this area. Firstly, when this instrument distorted its bodily complex towards low vital energy due to this occurrence, it was a recognizable substance which caused this. This was not a, shall we say, natural substance, nor was the mind, body, spirit complex enough aware of its distortion toward its physical weakness. The natural ways of, shall we say, everyday existence in which the entity without the distortions caused by ingestion of strongly effective chemicals may be seen to be of an always appropriate nature. There are no mistakes, including the action of this instrument. Secondly, the means of protection against any negative or debilitating influence for those upon the positive path was demonstrated by this instrument to a very great degree. Consider, if you will, the potentials that this particular occurrence had for negative influences to enter the instrument. This instrument thought upon the Creator in its solitude and in actions with other self, continually praised and gave thanksgiving to the Creator for the experiences it was having. This in turn allowed this particular self such energies as became a catalyst for an opening and strengthening of the other self's ability to function in a more positively polarized state. Thus we see protection being very simple. Give thanksgiving for each moment. See the self and the other self as Creator. Open the heart. Always know the light and praise it. This is all the protection necessary. Question 32.2. Questioner, we will now continue with the material from the day before yesterday. The subject is how sexual polarity acts as a catalyst in evolution and how to best make use of this catalyst. Going back to that material, I will fill in a few gaps that we possibly do not understand too well at this point. Can you tell me the difference between orange and yellow ray activation? I am going to work up from the red ray right on through the violet. We have covered red ray, so I would like to ask now what the difference is between yellow and orange ray activation. Answer, I am Ra. The orange ray is that influence or vibratory pattern wherein the mind, body, spirit expresses its power on an individual basis. Thus power over individuals may be seen to be orange ray. This ray has been quite intense among your peoples on an individual basis. You may see in this ray the treating of other selves as non-entities, slaves, or chattel, thus giving other selves no status whatever. The yellow ray is a focal and very powerful ray and concerns the entity in relation to, shall we say, groups, societies, or large numbers of mind, body, spirit complexes. This orange, we correct ourselves, this yellow ray vibration is at the heart of bellicose actions in which one group of entities feels the necessity and right of dominating other groups of entities and bending their wills to the wills of the masters. The negative path, as we'll call it, uses a combination of the yellow ray and the orange ray in its polarization patterns. These rays, used in a dedicated fashion, will bring about a contact with intelligent infinity. The usual nature of sexual interaction, if one is yellow or orange in primary vibratory patterns, is one of blockage and then insatiable hunger due to the blockage. When there are two selves vibrating in this area, the potential for polarization through the sexual interaction is begun, one entity experiencing the pleasure of humiliation and slavery or bondage, the other experiencing the pleasure of mastery and control over another entity. This way a sexual energy transfer of a negative polarity is experienced. Question 32.3. Questioner, from the material that you transmitted February the 17th you stated, in third ray there are two possibilities. Firstly, if both vibrate in third ray there will be a mutually strengthening energy transfer. What color is third ray in this material? Answer, I am Ra. The ray we were speaking of in that material should be properly the green ray or fourth ray. Question 32.4. Questioner, so I should change that third to fourth or green? Ra, this is correct. Please continue to scan for errors having to do with numbering, as you call them, as this concept is foreign to us and we must translate, if you will, when using numbers. This is an ongoing weakness of this contact due to the difference between our ways and yours. Your aid is appreciated. Question 32.5. Questioner, thank you. I believe for the time being we have amply covered green ray, so I am going to skip over green ray and go to blue ray. Could you tell me the difference that occurs between green ray and blue ray with the emphasis on blue ray? Answer, I am Ra. With the green ray transfer of energy you now come to the great turning point sexually as well as in each other mode of experience. The green ray may then be turned outward, the entity then giving rather than receiving. The first giving beyond green ray is the giving of acceptance or freedom, thus allowing the recipient of blue ray energy transfer the opportunity for a feeling of being accepted, thus freeing that other self to express itself to the giver of this ray. It will be noted that once green ray energy transfer has been achieved by two mind, body, spirits in mating, the further rays are available without both entities having the necessity to progress equally. Thus a blue ray vibrating entity or indigo ray vibrating entity whose other ray vibrations are clear may share that energy with the green ray other self, thus acting as catalyst for the continued learned teaching of the other self. Until another self reaches green ray, such energy transfer through the rays is not possible. Question 32.6. Questioner, what is the difference between indigo and blue ray transfer? Answer, I am Ra. The indigo ray is the ray of, shall we say, awareness of the Creator as self, thus one whose indigo ray vibrations have been activated can offer the energy transfer of Creator to Creator. This is the beginning of the sacramental nature of what you call your bisexual reproductive act. It is unique in bearing the awareness, the unity in its offering to other self. Question 32.7. Questioner, what is the difference between violet ray and the others? Answer, I am Ra. The violet ray, just as the red ray, is constant in the sexual experience. Its experience by other self may be distorted or completely ignored or not apprehended by other self. However, the violet ray, being the sum and substance of the mind, body, spirit complex, surrounds and informs any action by a mind, body, spirit complex. Question 32.8. Questioner, do the energy transfers of this nature occur in the fifth, sixth, and seventh density, all the rays? Answer, I am Ra. The rays, as you understand them, have such a different meaning in the next density and the next and so forth that we must answer your query in the negative. Energy transfers only take place in fourth, fifth, and sixth densities. These are still of what you would call a polarized nature. However, due to the ability of these densities to see the harmonies between individuals, these entities choose those mates which are harmonious, thus allowing constant transfer of energy and the propagation of the body complexes which each density uses. The process is different in the fifth and the sixth density than you may understand it. However, it is in these cases still based upon polarity. In the seventh density there is not this particular energy exchange as it is unnecessary to recycle body complexes. Question 32.9. Questioner, I am assuming we have on Earth today and have had in the past fourth, fifth, and sixth density wanderers. As they come into incarnation in the physical of this density for a period as a wanderer, what types of polarizations with respect to these various rays do they find affecting them? Answer, I am Ra. I believe I grasp the thrust of your query. Please ask further if this answer is not sufficient. Fourth density wanderers, of which there are not many, will tend to choose those entities which seem to be full of love or in need of love. There is the great probability of entities making errors in judgment due to the compassion with which other selves are viewed. The fifth density wanderer is one who is not tremendously affected by the stimulus of the various rays of other self and in its own way offers itself when a need is seen. Such entities are not likely to engage in the, shall we say, custom of your peoples called marriage, and are very likely to feel an aversion to childbearing and child-raising due to the awareness of the impropriety of the planetary vibrations relative to the harmonious vibrations of the density of light. The sixth density, whose means of propagation you may liken to what you call fusion, is likely to refrain, to a great extent, from the bisexual reproductive programming of the bodily complex and instead seek out those with whom the sexual energy transfer is of the complete fusion nature insofar as this is possible in manifestation in third density. Question 32.10. Questioner, can you expand a little bit on what you mean by complete fusion nature? Answer, I am Ra. The entire creation is of the one creator. Thus the division of sexual activity into simply that of the bodily complex is an artificial division, all things thusly being seen as sexual equally, the mind, the body, and the spirit, all of which are part of the polarity of the entity. Thus sexual fusion may be seen with or without what you may call sexual intercourse to be the complete molding of the mind, the body, and the spirit in what feels to be a constant orgasm, shall we say, of joy and delight each in the other's beingness. Question 32.11. Questioner, would many wanderers of these densities have considerable problems with respect to incarnation in the third density because of this different orientation? Answer, I am Ra. The probability of such problems, as you call them, due to sixth density incarnating in third is rather large. It is not necessarily a problem if you would call it thusly. It depends upon the unique orientation of each mind, body, spirit complex having this situation or placement of vibratory relativities. Question 32.12. Questioner, can you give me an idea how the different colors? This is a difficult question to ask. I'm having trouble finding any words. What I'm trying to get at is how the different colors originate as the functions for the different expressions in consciousness. I don't know if this question is sufficient. Answer, I am Ra. This question is sufficiently clear for us to attempt explanation of what, as you have observed, is not easily grasped material for the intellectual mind. The nature of vibration is such that it may be seen as having mathematically straight or narrow steps. These steps may be seen as having boundaries. Within each boundary there are infinite gradations of vibration or color. However, as one approaches a boundary, an effort must be made to cross that boundary. These colors are a simplistic way of expressing the boundary divisions of your density. There is also the time-space analogy which may be seen as the color itself in a modified aspect. Question 32.13. Questioner, thank you. Is it possible for an entity in third density physical to vary across the entire band of colors, or is the entity pretty well zeroed in on one color? Answer, I am Ra. This will be the last full question of this working. Please restate for clarity. Question 32.14. Questioner, I meant, was it possible for a green ray person who is primarily of green ray activation to vary on both sides of the green ray in a large or a small amount in regards to energy activation, or is he primarily green ray? Answer, I am Ra. We grasp the newness of material requested by you. It was unclear, for we thought we had covered this material. The portion covered is this: the green ray activation is always vulnerable to the yellow or orange ray of possession, this being largely yellow ray but often coming into orange ray. Fear of possession, desire for possession, fear of being possessed, desire to be possessed, these are the distortions which will cause the deactivation of green ray energy transfer. The new material is this: once the green ray has been achieved, the ability of the entity to enter blue ray is immediate and is only awaiting the efforts of the individual. The indigo ray is opened only through considerable discipline and practice, largely having to do with acceptance of self, not only as the polarized and balanced self but as the creator, as an entity of infinite worth. This will begin to activate the indigo ray. Question 32.15. Questioner, thank you. Answer, I am Ra. Do you have any brief queries before we close? Question 32.16. Questioner, I think that anything I have would be too long, so I will just ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to make the contact better. Answer, I am Ra. All is well. We caution not only this instrument but each to look well to the vital energies necessary for non-depletion of the instrument and the contact level. You are most conscientious, my friends. We shall be with you. I leave you now in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. I communicate now. Question 33.1. Questioner, in our last session you said that each of us in these sessions should look well to the vital energies necessary for non-depletion of the instrument and the contact level. Did that mean that we should look at the instrument's vital energies or be careful of our own vital energies? Answer, I am Ra. Each entity is responsible for itself. The mechanics of this process taking place involve firstly the use of the physical bodily complex of third density with its accompanying physical material in order to voice these words. Thus this instrument needs to watch its vital energies carefully, for we do not wish to deplete this instrument. Secondly, the function of the supporting group may be seen to be firstly, that of protection for this contact, secondly, that of energizing the instrument and intensifying its vital energies. This supporting group has always, due to an underlying harmony, been of a very stable nature as regards protection in love and light, thus ensuring the continuation of this narrow-band contact. However, the vital energies of either of the supporting members being depleted, the instrument must then use a larger portion of its vital energies, thus depleting itself more than would be profitable on a long-term basis. Please understand that we ask your apology for this infringement upon your free will. However, it is our distortion understanding that you would prefer this information rather than, being left totally to your own dedication distortion, deplete the instrument or deplete the group to the point where the contact cannot be sustained. Question 33.2. Questioner, can you give us advice on how to maintain the best possible condition for maintaining contact? Answer, I am Ra. We have given information concerning the proper nurturing of this channel. We, therefore, repeat ourselves only in two ways in general. Firstly, we suggest that rather than being, shall we say, brave and ignoring a physical complex weakness distortion, it is good to share this distortion with the group and thus perhaps, shall we say, remove one opportunity for contact which is very wearying for the instrument, in order that another opportunity might come about in which the instrument is properly supported. Secondly, the work begun in harmony may continue in harmony, thanksgiving and praise of opportunities and of the Creator. These are your protections. These are our suggestions. We cannot be specific for your free will is of the essence in this contact. As we said, we only speak to this subject because of our grasp of your orientation towards long-term maintenance of this contact. This is acceptable to us. Question 33.3. Questioner, thank you very much. We have a device for so-called color therapy, and since we were on the concept of the different colors in the last session, I was wondering if this would in some way apply to the principle of color therapy in the shining of particular colors on the physical body. Does this create a beneficial effect, and can you tell me something about it? Answer, I am Ra. This therapy, as you call it, is a somewhat clumsy and variably useful tool for instigating in an entity's mind, body, spirit complex an intensification of energies or vibrations which may be of aid to the entity. The variableness of this device is due firstly to the lack of true colors used, secondly, to the extreme variation in sensitivity to vibration among your peoples. Question 33.4. Questioner, I would think that you could achieve a true color by passing light through a crystal of the particular color. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This would be one way of approaching accuracy in color. It is a matter of what you would call quality control that the celluloid used is of a varying color. This is not of a great or even visible variation, however, it does make some difference given specific applications. Question 33.5. Questioner, possibly you could use a prism breaking white light into its spectrum and screening off all parts of the spectrum except that which you wish to use by passing it through a slit. Would this be true? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 33.6. Questioner, I was wondering if there is a programming of experiences that causes an individual to get certain catalysts in his daily life. For instance, as we go through our daily life, there are many things which we can experience. We can look at these experiences as occurring by pure chance or by a conscious design of our own, such as making appointments or going places. I was wondering if there was a behind-the-scenes, as you might call it, programming of catalyst to create the necessary experiences for more rapid growth in the case of some entities. Does this happen? Answer, I am Ra. We believe we grasp the heart of your query. Please request further information if we are not correct. The incarnating entity which has become conscious of the incarnative process and thus programs its own experience may choose the amount of catalyst or, to phrase this differently, the number of lessons which it will undertake to experience and to learn from in one incarnation. This does not mean that all is predestined, but rather that there are invisible guidelines shaping events which will function according to this programming. Thus, if one opportunity is missed, another will appear until the, shall we say, student of the life experience grasps that a lesson is being offered and undertakes to learn it. Question 33.7. Questioner, then these lessons would be reprogrammed, you might say, as the life experience continues. Let's say that an entity develops the bias that he actually didn't choose to develop prior to incarnation. It is then possible to program experiences so that he will have an opportunity to alleviate this bias through balancing. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is precisely correct. Question 33.8. Questioner, thank you. From this I would extrapolate to the conjecture that the orientation in mind of the entity is the only thing that is of any consequence at all. The physical catalyst that he experiences, regardless of what is happening about him, will be a function strictly of his orientation in mind. I will use as an example deleted, this being a statement of the orientation in mind governing the catalyst. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. We prefer not to use any well-known examples, sayings, or adages in our communications to you due to the tremendous amount of distortion which any well-known saying has undergone. Therefore, we may answer the first part of your query asking that you delete the example. It is completely true to the best of our knowledge that the orientation or polarization of the mind-body-spirit complex is the cause of the perceptions generated by each entity. Thus a scene may be observed in your grocery store. The entity ahead of self may be without sufficient funds. One entity may then take this opportunity to steal. Another may take this opportunity to feel itself a failure. Another may unconcernedly remove the least necessary items, pay for what it can, and go about its business. The one behind the self, observing, may feel compassion, may feel an insult because of standing next to a poverty-stricken person, may feel generosity, may feel indifference. Do you now see the analogies in a more appropriate manner? Question 33.9. Questioner, I think that I do. Then from this I would extrapolate the concept, which is somewhat more difficult because, as you have explained before, even fourth density positive has the concept of defensive action, but above the level of fourth density the concept of defensive action is not in use. The concept of defensive action and offensive action are very much in use in our present density. I am assuming that if an entity is polarized strongly enough in his thought in a positive sense, that defensive action is not going to be necessary for him because the opportunity to apply defensive action will never originate for him. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is unknowable. In each case, as we have said, an entity able to program experiences may choose the number and the intensity of lessons to be learned. It is possible that an extremely positively oriented entity might program for itself situations testing the ability of self to refrain from defensive action even to the point of the physical death of self or other self. This is an intensive lesson and it is not known, shall we say, what entities have programmed. We may, if we desire, read this programming. However, this is an infringement and we choose not to do so. Question 33.10. Questioner, I would ask you if you are familiar with the motion picture called The Ninth Configuration. Are you familiar with this? Answer, I am Ra. We scan your mind and see this configuration called the Ninth Configuration. Question 33.11. Questioner, this motion picture brought out the point about which we have been talking. The Colonel had to make a decision. I was wondering about his polarization. He could have knuckled under, you might say, to the negative forces, but he chose to defend his friend instead. Is it possible for you to estimate which is more positively polarizing, to defend the positively oriented entity or to allow suppression by the negatively oriented entities? Answer, I am Ra. This question takes in the scope of fourth density as well as your own, and its answer may best be seen by the action of the entity called Jehoshua, which you call Jesus. This entity was to be defended by its friends. The entity reminded its friends to put away the sword. This entity then delivered itself to be put to the physical death. The impulse to protect the loved other self is one which persists through the fourth density, a density abounding in compassion. More than this we cannot and need not say. Question 33.12. Questioner, thank you. As we near the end of this master cycle, there may be an increasing amount of catalyst for entities. I am wondering if, as the planetary vibrations mismatch somewhat with the fourth density vibrations and catalyst is increased, if this will create more polarization, thereby getting a slightly greater harvest. Answer, I am Ra. The question must be answered in two parts. Firstly, the planetary catastrophes, as you may call them, are a symptom of the difficult harvest rather than a consciously programmed catalyst for harvest. Thus we do not concern ourselves with it, for it is random in respect to conscious catalysts such as we may make available. The second portion is this: the results of the random catalyst of what you call the earth changes are also random. Thus we may see probability-possibility vortices going towards positive and negative. However, it will be as it will be. The true opportunities for conscious catalyst are not a function of the earth changes but of the result of the seniority system of incarnations which at the time of the harvest has placed in incarnation those whose chances of using life experiences to become harvestable are the best. Question 33.13. Questioner, is this seniority system also used in the service to self side of becoming harvestable on that side? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. You may ask one more full question at this time. Question 33.14. Questioner, what I would like for you to do is list all the major mechanisms designed to provide catalytic experience that do not include interaction with other self. That is the first part. Answer, I am Ra. We grasp from this question that you realize that the primary mechanism for catalytic experience in third density is other self. The list of other catalytic influences: firstly, the Creator's universe; secondly, the self. Question 33.15. Questioner, can you list any subheadings under self or ways the self is acted upon catalytically which would produce experience? Answer, I am Ra. Firstly, the self unmanifested. Secondly, the self in relation to the societal self created by self and other self. Thirdly, the interaction between self and the gadgets, toys and amusements of the self, other self-invention. Fourthly, the self-relationship with those attributes which you may call a war and rumors of war. Question 33.16. Questioner, I was thinking possibly of the catalyst of physical pain. Does this go under this heading? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct, it going under the heading of the unmanifested self, that is, the self which does not need other self in order to manifest or act. Question 33.17. Questioner, do we have enough time left to ask the second part of this question, which is to list all major mechanisms designed to provide the catalysts that include action with other self? Answer, I am Ra. You have much time for this, for we may express this list in one of two ways. We could speak infinitely, or we could simply state that any interaction betwixt self and other self has whatever potential for catalyst that there exists in the potential difference between self and other self, this moderated and undergirded by the constant fact of the Creator as self and as other self. You may ask to this question further if you wish specific information. Question 33.18. Questioner, I believe that this is sufficient for the time being. Answer, I am Ra. Do you have a brief query or two before we close this working? Question 33.19. Questioner, yes, here is one question. Is there any difference in violet ray activity or brightness between entities who are at entrance level both positive and negative to fourth density? Answer, I am Ra. This correct. The violet ray of the positive fourth density will be tinged with a green, blue, indigo triad of energies. This tinge may be seen as a portion of the rainbow or prism, as you know it, the rays being quite distinct. The violet ray of fourth density negative has in its aura, shall we say, the tinge of red, orange, yellow, these rays being muddied rather than distinct. Question 33.20. Questioner, what would the rays of fifth and sixth density look like? Answer, I am Ra. We may speak only approximately. However, we hope you understand, shall we say, that there is a distinctive difference in the color structure of each density. Fifth density is perhaps best described as extremely white in vibration. The sixth density of the whiteness which contains a golden quality as you would perceive it, these colors having to do with the blending into wisdom of the compassion learned in fourth density, then in sixth the blending of wisdom back into an unified understanding of compassion viewed with wisdom. This golden color is not of your spectrum but is what you would call alive. You may ask one more question briefly. Question 33.21. Questioner, then I would ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Answer, I am Ra. This working is well. You are attempting to be conscientious. We thank you. May we say we enjoyed your vision of our social memory complex drinking one of your liquids while speaking through this instrument. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 34.1. Questioner, the instrument would like to know if 2 short exercise periods per day would be better for her than 1 long one. Answer, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The proper configuration of the physical complex exercising during the 3-month period wherein the instrument is vulnerable to physical complex distortion intensification, needs the strengthening of the physical complex. This may appropriately be seen to be one major period of the exercising followed late in your diurnal cycle before the evening meditation by an exercise period approximately 1/2 the length of the first. This will be seen to be wearing upon the instrument. However, it will have the effect of strengthening the physical complex and lessening the vulnerability which might be taken advantage of. Question 34.2. Questioner, you stated at an earlier time that penetration of the 8th level or intelligent infinity allows a mind, body, spirit complex to be harvested if it wishes at any time-space during the cycle. When this penetration of the 8th level occurs, what does the entity who penetrates it experience? Answer, I am Ra. The experience of each entity is unique in its perception of intelligent infinity. Perceptions range from a limitless joy to a strong dedication to service to others while in the incarnated state. The entity which reaches intelligent infinity most often will perceive this experience as one of unspeakable profundity. However, it is not usual for the entity to immediately desire the cessation of the incarnation. Rather, the desire to communicate or use this experience to aid others is extremely strong. Question 34.3. Questioner, is it possible for you to tell me what I experienced around 1964, I believe it was, when in meditation I became aware of what I considered a different density and different planet, and seemed to experience moving on to that planet? Is it possible for you to tell me what experience that was? Answer, I am Ra. We see some harm in full disclosure due to infringement. We content ourselves with suggesting that this entity, which is not readily able to subject itself to the process of hypnotic regression instigated by others, nevertheless, has had its opportunities for understanding of its beingness. Question 34.4. Questioner: Thank you. Would you define karma? Answer: I am Ra. Our understanding of karma is that which may be called inertia. Those actions which are put into motion will continue using the ways of balancing until such time as the controlling or higher principle which you may liken unto your breaking or stopping is invoked. This stoppage of the inertia of action may be called forgiveness. These two concepts are inseparable. Question 34.5. Questioner: If an entity develops what is called karma in an incarnation, is there then programming that sometimes occurs so that he will experience catalysts that will enable him to get to a point of forgiveness, thereby alleviating the karma? Answer: I am Ra. This is, in general, correct. However, both self and any involved other self may, at any time through the process of understanding, acceptance, and forgiveness, ameliorate these patterns. This is true at any point in an incarnative pattern. Thus one who has set in motion an action may forgive itself and never again make that error. This also breaks or stops what you call karma. Question 34.6. Questioner: Thank you. Can you give me examples of catalytic action from the last session, beginning with the self-unmanifested producing learning catalyst? Answer: I am Ra. We observed your interest in the catalyst of pain. This experience is most common among your entities. The pain may be of the physical complex. More often it is of the mental and emotional complex. In some few cases the pain is spiritual in complex nature. This creates a potential for learning. The lessons to be learned vary. Almost always these lessons include patience, tolerance, and the ability for the light touch. Very often the catalyst for emotional pain, whether it be the death of the physical complex of one other self which is loved or other seeming loss, will simply result in the opposite, in a bitterness and impatience, a souring. This is catalyst which has gone awry. In these cases then there will be additional catalyst provided to offer the unmanifested self further opportunities for discovering the self as all-sufficient creator containing all that there is and full of joy. Question 34.7. Questioner: Do what we call contagious diseases play any part in this process with respect to the unmanifested self? Answer: I am Ra. These so-called contagious diseases are those entities of second density which offer an opportunity for this type of catalyst. If this catalyst is unneeded, then these second density creatures, as you would call them, do not have an effect. In each of these generalizations you may please note that there are anomalies so that we cannot speak to every circumstance but only to the general run or way of things as you experience them. Question 34.8. Questioner: What part do what we call birth defects play in this process? Answer: I am Ra. This is a portion of the programming of the mind, body, spirit complex totality manifested in the mind, body, spirit of third density. These defects are planned as limitations which are part of the experience intended by the entity's totality complex. This includes genetic predispositions, as you may call them. Question 34.9. Questioner: Thank you. Can you give me the same type of information about the self in relation to the societal self? Answer: I am Ra. The unmanifested self may find its lessons those which develop any of the energy influx centers of the mind, body, spirit complex. The societal and self interactions most often concentrate upon the second and third energy centers. Thus those most active in attempting to remake or alter the society are those working from feelings of being correct personally or of having answers which will put power in a more correct configuration. This may be seen to be of a full travel from negative to positive in orientation. Either will activate these energy ray centers. There are some few whose desires to aid society are of a green ray nature or above. These entities, however, are few due to the understanding, may we say, a fourth ray that universal love freely given is more to be desired than principalities or even the rearrangement of peoples or political structures. Question 34.10. Questioner, if an entity were to be strongly biased toward positive societal effects, what would this do to his yellow ray in the aura as opposed to an entity who wanted to create an empire of society and govern it with an iron fist? Answer, I am Ra. Let us take two such positively oriented active souls no longer in your physical time-space. The one known as Albert went into a strange and, to it, a barbaric society in order that it might heal. This entity was able to mobilize great amounts of energy and what you call money. This entity spent much green ray energy both as a healer and as a lover of your instrument known as the organ. This entity's yellow ray was bright and crystallized by the efforts needed to procure the funds to promulgate its efforts. However, the green and blue rays were of a toweringly brilliant nature as well. The higher levels, as you may call them, being activated, the lower, as you may call them, energy points remaining in a balance, being quite bright. The other example is the entity, Martin. This entity dealt in a great degree with rather negative orange ray and yellow ray vibratory patterns. However, this entity was able to keep open the green ray energy, and due to the severity of its testing, if anything, this entity may be seen to have polarized more towards the positive due to its fidelity to service to others in the face of great catalyst. Question 34.11. Questioner, could you give me the last names of Albert and Martin? Answer, I am Ra. These entities are known to you as Albert Schweitzer and Martin Luther King. Question 34.12. Questioner, I thought that was correct, but I wasn't sure. Can you give me the same type of information that we have been getting here with respect to the unmanifested interacting between self and gadgets and toys and inventions? Answer, I am Ra. In this particular instance we again concentrate for the most part in the orange and in the yellow energy centers. In a negative sense, many of the gadgets among your peoples, that is what you call your communication devices and other distractions such as the less competitive games, may be seen to have the distortion of keeping the mind, body, spirit complex unactivated so that yellow and orange ray activity is much weakened, thus carefully decreasing the possibility of eventual green ray activation. Others of your gadgets may be seen to be tools whereby the entity explores the capabilities of its physical or mental complexes and in some few cases, the spiritual complex, thus activating the orange ray in what you call your team sports and in other gadgets such as your modes of transport. These may be seen to be ways of investigating the feelings of power, more especially, power over others or a group power over another group of other selves. Question 34.13. Questioner, what is the general overall effect of television on our society with respect to this catalyst? Answer, I am Ra. Without ignoring the green ray attempts of many to communicate via this medium such information of truth and beauty as may be helpful, we must suggest that the sum effect of this gadget is that of distraction and sleep. Question 34.14. Questioner, can you give me the same type of information that we are working on now with respect to war and rumors of war? Answer, I am Ra. You may see this in relationship to your gadgets. This war and self relationship is a fundamental perception of the maturing entity. There is a great chance to accelerate in whatever direction is desired. One may polarize negatively by assuming bellicose attitudes for whatever reason. One may find oneself in the situation of war and polarize somewhat towards the positive activating orange, yellow, and then green rays by heroic, if you may call them this, actions taken to preserve the mind, body, spirit complexes of other selves. Finally, one may polarize very strongly third ray asterisk by expressing the principle of universal love at the total expense of any distortion towards involvement in bellicose actions. In this way the entity may become a conscious being in a very brief span of your time-space. This may be seen to be what you would call a traumatic progression. It is to be noted that among your entities a large percentage of all progression has as catalyst, trauma. Asterisk, this should be fourth ray. Ra corrected the mistake in the next answer. Question 34.15. Questioner, you just used the term third ray in that statement. Was that the term you meant to use? Answer, I am Ra. We intended the green ray. Our difficulty lies in our perception of red ray and violet ray as fixed. Thus the inner rays are those which are varying and are to be observed as those indications of seniority in the attempts to form and harvest. Question 34. 16. Questioner, would the red ray, an intense red ray, then be used as an index for seniority in incarnation as well as an intense violet ray? Answer, I am Ra. This is partially correct. In the graduation or harvesting to fourth density positive, the red ray is seen only as that which, being activated, is the basis for all that occurs in vibratory levels, the sum of this being violet ray energy. This violet ray is the only consideration for fourth density positive. In assessing the harvestable fourth density negative, the intensity of the red as well as the orange and the yellow rays is looked upon quite carefully, as a great deal of stamina and energy of this type is necessary for the negative progression, it being extremely difficult to open the gateway to intelligent infinity from the solar plexus center. This is necessary for harvest in fourth density negative. Question 34.17. Questioner, is it possible for you to use as an example our general pattern and tell me the effect that war had on him in his development? Answer, I am Ra. This will be the last full question of this working. The one of whom you speak, known as George, was one in whom the programming of previous incarnations had created a pattern or inertia which was irresistible in its incarnation in your time-space. This entity was of a strong yellow ray activation with frequent green ray openings and occasional blue ray openings. However, it did not find itself able to break the mold of previous traumatic experiences of a bellicose nature. This entity polarized somewhat towards the positive in its incarnation due to its singleness of belief in truth and beauty. This entity was quite sensitive. It felt a great honor duty to the preservation of that which was felt by the entity to be true, beautiful, and in need of defense. This entity perceived itself a gallant figure. It polarized somewhat towards the negative in its lack of understanding the green ray it carried with it, rejecting the forgiveness principle which is implicit in universal love. The sum total of this incarnation vibrationally was a slight increase in positive polarity but a decrease in harvestability due to the rejection of the law or way of responsibility, that is, seeing universal love, yet still it fought on. Question 34.18. Questioner, do we have enough time for me to ask if the death, almost immediately after the cessation of war, of this entity could have been so that it could have immediately been reincarnated so that it could make harvest? Answer, I am Ra. This is precisely correct. Question 34.19. Questioner, thank you. Then I will just ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Answer, I am Ra. All is well. We leave you, my friends, in the love and the light of the one which is all in all. I leave you in an everlasting peace. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 35.1. Questioner, I would like to say that we consider it a great privilege to be doing this work, and we hope that we will be questioning in the direction that will be of value to the readers of this material. I thought that in this session it might be helpful to inspect the effect of the rays of different well-known figures in history to aid in understanding how the catalyst of the illusion creates spiritual growth. I was making a list that I thought we might use to hit the high points on the workings of the catalysts on these individuals, starting with the one we know as Franklin D. Roosevelt. Could you say something about that entity? Answer, I am Ra. It is to be noted that in discussing those who are well known among your peoples there is the possibility that information may be seen to be specific to one entity, whereas in actuality the great design of experience is much the same for each entity. It is with this in mind that we would discuss the experiential forces which offered catalyst to an individual. It is further to be noted that in the case of those entities lately incarnate, much distortion may have taken place in regard to misinformation and misinterpretation of an entity's thoughts or behaviors. We shall now proceed to, shall we say, speak of the basic parameters of the one known as Franklin. When any entity comes into third density incarnation, each of its energy centers is potentiated but must be activated by the self-using experience. The one known as Franklin developed very quickly up through red, orange, yellow and green and began to work in the blue-ray energy center at a tender age, as you would say. This rapid growth was due, firstly, to previous achievements in the activation of the rays, secondly, to the relative comfort and leisure of its early existence, thirdly, due to the strong desire upon the part of the entity to progress. This entity mated with an entity whose blue-ray vibrations were of a strength more than equal to its own, thus acquiring catalyst for further growth in that area that was to persist throughout the incarnation. This entity had some difficulty with continued green-ray activity due to the excessive energy which was put into the activities regarding other selves in the distortion towards acquiring power. This was to have its toll upon the physical vehicle, as you may call it. The limitation of the non-movement of a portion of the physical vehicle opened once again, for this entity, the opportunity for concentration upon the more, shall we say, universal or idealistic aspects of power, that is, the non-abusive use of power. Thus at the outset of a bellicose action this entity had lost some positive polarity due to excessive use of the orange and yellow ray energies at the expense of green and blue ray energies, then had regained the polarity due to the catalytic effects of a painful limitation upon the physical complex. This entity was not of a bellicose nature but rather during the conflict continued to vibrating green ray working with the blue ray energies. The entity who was the one known as Franklin's teacher also functioned greatly during this period as blue-ray activator, not only for its mate but also in a more universal expression. This entity polarized continuously in a positive fashion in the universal sense while, in a less universal sense, developing a pattern of what may be called karma, this karma having to do with inharmonious relationship distortions with the mate teacher. Question 35.2. Questioner. Two things I would like to clear up. First, then Franklin's teacher was his wife? Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 35.3. Questioner, secondly, did Franklin place the physical limitation on his body himself? Answer, I am Ra. This is partially correct. The basic guidelines for the lessons and purposes of incarnation had been carefully set forth before incarnation by the mind, body, spirit complex totality. If the one known as Franklin had avoided the excessive enjoyment of or attachment to the competitiveness which may be seen to be inherent in the processes of its occupation, this entity would not have had the limitation. However, the desire to serve and to grow was strong in this programming, and when the opportunities began to cease due to these distortions towards love of power, the entity's limiting factor was activated. Question 35.4. Questioner, I would now like to ask for the same type of information with respect to Adolf Hitler. You have given a little of this already. It is not necessary for you to recover what you have already given. Could you complete that information? Answer, I am Ra. In speaking of the one you call Adolf, we have some difficulty due to the intense amount of confusion present in this entity's life patterns, as well as the great confusion which greets any discussion of this entity. Here we see an example of one who, in attempting activation of the highest rays of energy while lacking the green ray key, cancelled itself out as far as polarization either towards positive or negative. This entity was basically negative. However, its confusion was such that the personality disintegrated, thus leaving the mind, body, spirit complex unharvestable and much in need of healing. This entity followed the pattern of negative polarization which suggests the elite and the enslaved, this being seen by the entity to be of an unhelpful nature for the societal structure. However, in drifting from the conscious polarization into what you may call a twilight world where dream took the place of events in your space-time continuum, this entity failed in its attempt to serve the Creator in an unharvestable degree along the path of service to self. Thus we see the so-called insanity which may often arise when an entity attempts to polarize more quickly than experience may be integrated. We have advised and suggested caution and patience in previous communications and do so again, using this entity as an example of the over-hasty opening of polarization without due attention to the synthesized and integrated mind-body-spirit complex. To know yourself is to have the foundation upon firm ground. Question 35.5. Questioner: thank you. That is an important example, I believe. I was wondering if any of those who were subordinate to Adolf at that time were able to polarize in the harvestable nature on the negative path? Answer: I am Ra. We can speak only of two entities who may be harvestable in a negative sense, others still being in the physical incarnation, one known to you as Haman, the other known, as it preferred to be called, Himmler. Question 35.6. Questioner: thank you. Earlier we discussed Abraham Lincoln as a rather unique case. Is it possible for you to tell us why the fourth density being used Abraham Lincoln's body, what its orientation was, and when this took place with respect to the activities that were occurring in our society at that time? Answer: I am Ra. This is possible. Question 35.7. Questioner: would it be of value for the reader to know this in your estimation? Answer: I am Ra. You must shape your queries according to your discernment. Question 35.8. Questioner: well, in that case I would like to know the motivation for this use of Abraham Lincoln's body at that time. Answer: I am Ra. This shall be the last full query of this session, as we find the instrument quite low in vital energies. The one known as Abraham had an extreme difficulty in many ways and, due to physical, mental, and spiritual pain, was weary of life but without the orientation to self-destruction. In your time, 1853, this entity was contacted in sleep by a fourth density being. This being was concerned with the battles between the forces of light and the forces of darkness which have been waged in fourth density for many of your years. This entity accepted the honor duty of completing the one known as Abraham's karmic patterns, and the one known as Abraham discovered that this entity would attempt those things which the one known as Abraham desired to do but felt it could not. Thus the exchange was made. The entity, Abraham, was taken to a plane of suspension until the cessation of its physical vehicle, much as though we of Ra would arrange with this instrument to remain in the vehicle, come out of the trance state, and function as this instrument, leaving this instrument's mind and spirit complex in its suspended state. The planetary energies at this time were at what seemed to this entity to be at a critical point, for that which you know as freedom had gained in acceptance as a possibility among many peoples. This entity saw the work done by those beginning the democratic concept of freedom, as you call it, in danger of being abridged or abrogated by the rising belief and use of the principle of the enslavement of entities. This is a negative concept of a fairly serious nature in your density. This entity, therefore, went forward into what it saw as the battle for the light, for healing of the rupture in the concept of freedom. This entity did not gain or lose karma by these activities due to its detachment from any outcome. Its attitude throughout was one of service to others, more especially to the downtrodden or enslaved. The polarity of the individual was somewhat but not severely lessened by the cumulative feelings and thought forms which were created due to large numbers of entities leaving the physical plane due to trauma of battle. May we ask if this is the information you requested, or if we may supply any further information? Question 35.9. Questioner: I will ask any further questions during the next working period, which should occur in about 4 days. We do not want to overtire the instrument. I will only ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact. Answer: I am Ra. All is well. I leave you, my friends, in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 36.1. Questioner, in previous communications you have spoken of the mind, body, spirit complex totality. Would you please give us a definition of the mind, body, spirit complex totality? Answer: I am Ra. There is a dimension in which time does not have sway. In this dimension, the mind, body, spirit in its eternal dance of the present may be seen in totality, and before the mind, body, spirit complex, which then becomes a part of the social memory complex, is willingly absorbed into the awareness of the one creator, the entity knows itself in its totality. This mind, body, spirit complex totality functions as, shall we say, a resource for what you perhaps would call the higher self. The higher self, in turn, is a resource for examining the distillations of third density experience and programming further experience. This is also true of densities 4, 5, and 6, with the mind, body, spirit complex totality coming into consciousness in the course of 7th density. Question 36.2. Questioner, then would the mind, body, spirit complex totality be responsible for programming changes in catalyst during a third density experience of the mind, body, spirit complex so that the proper catalyst would be added, shall we say, as conditions for the complex change during third density experience? Answer: I am Ra. This is incorrect. The higher self, as you call it, that self which exists with full understanding of the accumulation of experiences of the entity, aids the entity in achieving healing of the experiences which have not been learned properly, and assists, as you have indicated, in further life experience programming, as you may call it. The mind, body, spirit complex totality is that which may be called upon by the higher self aspect, just as the mind, body, spirit complex calls upon the higher self. In the one case you have a structured situation within the space-time continuum, with the higher self having available to it the totality of experiences which have been collected by an entity and a very firm grasp of the lessons to be learned in this density. The mind, body, spirit complex totality is as the shifting sands and is in some part a collection of parallel developments of the same entity. This information is made available to the higher self aspect. This aspect may then use these projected probability-possibility vortices in order to better aid in what you would call future life programming. Question 36.3. Questioner, out of the Seth material we have a statement in which Seth says that each entity here on earth is one part of or aspect of a higher self or oversoul, which has many aspects or parts in many dimensions, all of which learn lessons which allow the higher self to progress in a balanced manner. Am I to understand from this that there are many experiences similar to the one which we experience in the third density which are governed by a single higher self? Answer: I am Ra. The correctness of this statement is variable. The more in balance an entity becomes, the less the possibility-probability vortices may need to be explored in parallel experiences. Question 36.4. Questioner, do I understand from this then that the higher self or oversoul may break down into numerous units if the experience is required to what we would call simultaneously experience different types of catalysts and then oversee these experiences? Answer: I am Ra. This is a statement we cannot say to be correct or incorrect due to the confusions of what you call time. True simultaneity is available only when all things are seen to be occurring at once. This overshadows the concept of which you speak. The concept of various parts of the being living experiences of varying natures simultaneously is not precisely accurate due to your understanding that this would indicate that this was occurring with true simultaneity. This is not the case. The case is from universe to universe, and parallel existences can then be programmed by the higher self given the information available from the mind, body, spirit complex totality regarding the probability-possibility vortices at any crux. Question 36.5. Questioner, could you give an example of how this programming by the higher self would then bring about education through parallel experiences? Answer: I am Ra. Perhaps the simplest example of this apparent simultaneity of existence of two selves, which are in truth one self at the same time-space, is this: the oversoul, as you call it, or higher self, seems to exist simultaneously with the mind, body, spirit complex which it aids. This is not actually simultaneous, for the higher self is moving to the mind, body, spirit complex as needed from a position and development of the entity which will be considered in the future of this entity. Question 36.6. Questioner, then the higher self operates from the future as we understand things. In other words, my higher self would operate from what I consider to be my future. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. From the standpoint of your spacetime, this is correct. Question 36.7. Questioner, in that case my higher self would have a very large advantage in knowing what was needed, since it would know, as far as I am concerned, what was going to happen. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is incorrect, in that this would be an abrogation of free will. The higher self aspect is aware of the lessons learned through the sixth density. The progress rate is fairly well understood. The choices which must be made to achieve the higher self as it is are in the provenance of the mind, body, spirit complex itself. Thus the higher self is like the map in which the destination is known. The roads are very well known, these roads being designed by intelligent infinity working through intelligent energy. However, the higher self aspect can program only for the lessons and certain predisposing limitations if it wishes. The remainder is completely the free choice of each entity. There is the perfect balance between the known and the unknown. Question 36.8. Questioner, I'm sorry for having so much trouble with these concepts, but they are very difficult, I am sure, to translate into our understanding and language. Some of my questions may be rather ridiculous, but does this higher self have some type of vehicle like our physical vehicle? Does it have a bodily complex? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. The higher self is of a certain advancement within sixth density going into the seventh. After the seventh has been well entered, the mind, body, spirit complex becomes so totally a mind, body, spirit complex totality that it begins to gather spiritual mass and approach the octave density. Thus the looking backwards is finished at that point. Question 36.9. Questioner, is the higher self of every entity of a sixth density nature? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. This is an honor duty of self to self as one approaches seventh density. Question 36.10. Questioner, let me be sure that I understand this then. We have spoken of certain particular individuals. For instance, we were speaking of George Patton in a previous communication. Then his higher self at the time of his incarnation here as George Patton about 40 years ago was of sixth density. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. We make note at this time that each entity has several beings upon which to call for inner support. Any of these may be taken by an entity to be the mind, body, spirit complex totality. However, this is not the case. The mind, body, spirit complex totality is a nebulous collection of all that may occur held in understanding, the higher self itself a projection or manifestation of mind, body, spirit complex totality which then may communicate with the mind, body, spirit during the discarnate part of the cycle of rebirth or during the incarnation, may communicate if the proper pathways or channels through the roots of mind are opened. Question 36.11. Questioner, these channels would then be opened by meditation, and I am assuming that the intense polarization would help in this. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is partially correct. Intense polarization does not necessarily develop, in the mind, body, spirit complex, the will or need to contact the oversoul. Each path of life experience is unique. However, given the polarization, the will is greatly enhanced and vice versa. Question 36.12. Questioner, let me take as an example the one that you said was called Himmler. We are assuming from this that his higher self was of the sixth density, and it was stated that Himmler had selected the negative path. Would his higher self then dwell in a sixth density negative type of situation? Can you expand on this concept? Answer, I am Ra. There are no negative beings which have attained the oversoul manifestation, which is the honor duty of the mind, body, spirit complex totality, of late sixth density as you would term it in your time measurements. These negatively oriented mind, body, spirit complexes have a difficulty which to our knowledge has never been overcome, for after fifth density graduation wisdom is available but must be matched with an equal amount of love. This love light is very, very difficult to achieve in unity when following the negative path, and during the earlier part of the sixth density, society complexes of the negative orientation will choose to release the potential and leap into the sixth density positive. Therefore, the oversoul which makes its understanding available to all who are ready for such aid is towards the positive. However, the free will of the individual is paramount, and any guidance given by the higher self may be seen in either the positive or negative polarity depending upon the choice of a mind, body, spirit complex. Question 36.13. Questioner, then using Himmler as an example, was his higher self at the time he was incarnate in the 1940s a sixth density positively oriented higher self? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 36.14. Questioner, was Himmler in any way in contact with his higher self at that time when he was incarnate during the 1940s? Answer, I am Ra. We remind you that the negative path is one of separation. What is the first separation, the self from the self? The one known as Himmler did not choose to use its abilities of will and polarization to seek guidance from any source but its conscious drives, self-chosen in the life experience and nourished by previous biases created in other life experiences. Question 36.15. Questioner, well then let's say that when Himmler reaches sixth density negative, would he realize that his higher self was positively oriented and for that reason make the jump from negative to positive orientation? Answer, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The sixth density negative entity is extremely wise. It observes the spiritual entropy occurring due to the lack of ability to express the unity of sixth density. Thus, loving the Creator and realizing at some point that the Creator is not only self but other self as self, this entity consciously chooses an instantaneous energy reorientation so that it may continue its evolution. Question 36.16. Questioner, then the sixth density entity who has reached that point in positive orientation may choose to become what we call a wanderer and move back. I am wondering if this ever occurs with a negatively oriented sixth density entity. Do any ever move back as wanderers? Answer, I am Ra. Once the negatively polarized entity has reached a certain point in the wisdom density, it becomes extremely unlikely that it will choose to risk the forgetting, for this polarization is not selfless but selfish, and with wisdom realizes the jeopardy of such wandering. Occasionally a sixth density negative becomes a wanderer in an effort to continue to polarize towards the negative. This is extremely unusual. Question 36.17. Questioner, then what is the mechanism that this unusual sixth density entity would wish to gain to polarize more negatively through wandering? Answer, I am Ra. The wanderer has the potential of greatly accelerating the density whence it comes in its progress in evolution. This is due to the intensive life experiences and opportunities of the third density. Thusly the positively oriented wanderer chooses to hazard the danger of the forgetting in order to be of service to others by radiating love of others. If the forgetting is penetrated, the amount of catalyst in third density will polarize the wanderer with much greater efficiency than shall be expected in the higher and more harmonious densities. Similarly, the negatively oriented wanderer dares to hazard the forgetting in order that it might accelerate its progress in evolution in its own density by serving itself in third density by offering to other selves the opportunity to hear the information having to do with negative polarization. Question 36.18. Questioner, are there any examples of sixth density negatively polarized wanderers in our historical past? Answer, I am Ra. This information could be harmful. We withhold it. Please attempt to view the entities about you as part of the Creator. We can explain no further. Question 36.19. Questioner, I was wondering if qualification for contact with Ra might include penetrating this forgetting process. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. This is quite correct. Question 36.20. Questioner, otherwise the law of confusion would prohibit this. Is this correct? Ra, this is correct. Question 36.21. Questioner, I was also wondering if 3 was the minimum number necessary for this type of working. Is this correct? Answer, I am Ra. For protection of this instrument, this is necessary as the minimum grouping and also as the most efficient number due to the exceptional harmony in this group. In other groups the number could be larger, but we have observed in this contact that the most efficient support is given by the individual mind, body, spirits present at this time. Question 36.22. Questioner, I'm a little fuzzy on a point with respect to the higher self. We each, I am assuming, have an individual higher self at 6th density positive level. Is this correct? Each of us in the room here, that is, the 3 of us. Answer, I am Ra. This shall be the last full question of this working. We shall attempt to aim for the intention of your query as we understand it. Please request any additional information. Firstly, it is correct that each in this dwelling place has one oversoul, as you may call it. However, due to the repeated harmonious interactions of this triad of entities, there may be seen to be a further harmonious interaction besides the 3 entities' higher selves. That is, each social memory complex has an oversoul of a type which is difficult to describe to you in words. In this group there are 2 such social memory complex totalities blending their efforts with your higher selves at this time. Question 36.23. Questioner, it is very difficult at times for us to get more than a small percentage of our understanding of some of these concepts because of our limitation of awareness, but I think that some meditation on the information from today will help us in formulating some questions about these concepts. Answer, I am Ra. May we ask for any brief queries before we leave this instrument? Question 36.24. Questioner, I'll just ask one short one before we close. Can you tell me what percentage of the wanderers on Earth today have been successful in penetrating the memory block and have become aware of who they are? And finally, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Answer, I am Ra. We can approximate the percentage of those penetrating intelligently their status. This is between 8½ and 9¾ %. There is a larger percentile group of those who have a fairly well-defined, shall we say, symptomology indicating to them that they are not of this, shall we say, insanity. This amounts to a bit over 50% of the remainder. Nearly 1/3 of the remainder are aware that something about them is different, so you see there are many gradations of awakening to the knowledge of being a wanderer. We may add that it is to the middle and first of these groups that this information will, shall we say, make sense. This instrument is well. The resting place is somewhat deleterious in its effect upon the comfort of the dorsal side of this instrument's physical vehicle. We have mentioned this before. You are conscientious. We leave you now, my friends. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing merrily in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Question 37.1. Questioner, is Ra familiar with the results of our efforts today to publish the first book that we did? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. Question 37.2. Questioner, I don't know if you can comment on the difficulty that we will have in making the law of one available to those who would require it and want it. It is not something that is easy to disseminate to those who want it at this time. I am sure that there are many, especially the wanderers, who want this information, but we will have to do something else in order to get it into their hands in the way of added material, I am afraid. Is it possible for you to comment on this? Answer, I am Ra. It is possible. Question 37.3. Questioner, will you comment on it? Answer: I am Ra. We shall. Firstly, the choosing of this group to do some work to serve others was of an intensive nature. Each present sacrificed much for no tangible result. Each may search its heart for the type of sacrifice, knowing that the material sacrifices are the least. The intensive commitment to blending into a harmonious group at the apex of sacrifice. Under these conditions we found your vibration. We observed your vibration. It will not be seen often. We do not wish to puff up the pride, but we shall not chaffer with the circumstances necessary for our particular contact. Thus you have received and we willingly undertake the honored duty of continuing to offer transmissions of concepts which are, to the best of our abilities, precise in nature and grounded in the attempt to unify many of those things that concerned you. Secondly, the use you make of these transmissions is completely at your discretion. We suggest the flowing of the natural intuitive senses and a minimum of the distortion towards concern. We are content, as we have said, to be able to aid in the evolution of one of your peoples. Whatever effort you make cannot disappoint us, for that number already exceeds 1. Question 37.4. Questioner: I have been very hesitant to ask certain questions for fear that they would be regarded, as I regard them, as questions of unimportance or of too great a specificity and thereby reduce our contact with you. In order to disseminate some of the information that I consider to be of great importance, that is, the non-transient type of information having to do with the evolution of mind, body and spirit, it seems almost necessary in our society to include information that is of little value simply because that is how our society works, how the system of distribution appraises that which is offered for distribution. Will you comment on this problem that I have? Answer: I am Ra. We comment as follows: it is quite precisely correct that the level and purity of this contact is dependent upon the level and purity of information sought. Thusly, the continued request for specific information from this particular source is deleterious to the substance of your purpose. Moreover, as we scanned your mind to grasp your situation as regards the typescript of some of our words, we found that you had been criticized for the type of language construction used to convey data. Due to our orientation with regard to data, even the most specifically answered question would be worded by our group in such a way as to maximize the accuracy of the nuances of the answer. This, however, mitigates against what your critic desires in the way of simple, lucid prose. More than this we cannot say. These are our observations of your situation. What you wish to do is completely your decision, and we remain at your service in whatever way we may be without breaking the way of confusion. Question 37.5. Questioner: we will attempt to work around these problems in the dissemination of the law of one. It will take some careful work to do this. I personally will not cease while still incarnate to disseminate this. It will be necessary to write a book, probably about UFOs, because the law of one is connected with the phenomenon. It's connected with all phenomena, but this seems to be the easiest entry for dissemination. I plan firstly to use the UFO in the advertising sense as it was meant by the Confederation as an entry into an explanation of the process of evolution that is going on this planet and how the rest of the Confederation has been involved in a more understandable way, shall I say, for the population that will read the book. We will use the raw material in undistorted form just as it has been recorded here in various places throughout the book to amplify and clarify what we are saying in the book. This is the only way that I can see right now to create enough dissemination for the people who would like to have the law of one for them to be able to get it. I could just print up the material that we have off of the tape recorder and publish it, but we wouldn't be able to disseminate it very well because of distribution problems. Will you comment on my second idea of doing a general book on UFO including the material from the law of one? Answer: I am Ra. We shall comment. We hope that your Ra plans materialize. This is a cosmic joke. You were asking for such an example of humor, and we feel this is a rather appropriate nexus in which one may be inserted. Continue with your intentions to the best of your natures and abilities. What more can be done, my friends? Question 37.6. Questioner: you said that each third density entity has an higher self in the sixth density which is moving to the mind, body, spirit complex of the entity as needed. Does this higher self also evolve in growth through the densities beginning with the first density, and does each higher self have a corresponding higher self advanced in densities beyond it? Answer: I am Ra. To simplify this concept is our intent. The higher self is a manifestation given to the late sixth density mind, body, spirit complex as a gift from its future selfness. The mid-seventh density's last action before turning towards the allness of the creator and gaining spiritual mass is to give this resource to the sixth density self, moving as you measure time in the stream of time. This self, the mind, body, spirit complex of late sixth density, has then the honor duty of using both the experiences of its total living bank of memory of experience, thoughts, and actions, and using the resource of the mind, body, spirit complex totality left behind as a type of infinitely complex thought form. In this way you may see yourself, your higher self or oversoul, and your mind, body, spirit complex totality as 3 points in a circle. The only distinction is that of your time-space continuum. All are the same being. Question 37.7. Questioner: does each entity have an individual mind, body, spirit complex totality, or do a number of entities share the same mind, body, spirit complex totality? Answer: I am Ra. Both of these statements are correct given the appropriate time-space conditions. Each entity has its totality, and at the point at which a planetary entity becomes a social memory complex, the totality of this union of entities also has its oversoul and its social memory complex totality as resource. As always, the sum, spiritually speaking, is greater than the sum of its parts, so that the oversoul of a social memory complex is not the sum of the oversouls of its member entities, but operates upon the way of what we have called squares and what we grasp you prefer to call doubling. Question 37.8. Questioner: thank you. And thank you for that explanation of the mathematics too. Could you define spiritual mass? Answer: I am Ra. This will be the last full question of this session. Spiritual mass is that which begins to attract the outmoving and ongoing vibratory oscillations of beingness into the gravity, speaking in a spiritual sense, well of the great central sun, core, or creator of the infinite universes. Question 37.9. Questioner: since we don't want to tire the instrument, I will just ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact. Answer: I am Ra. All is well. We leave you now in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite creator. Adonai. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. Question 38.1. Questioner: will you tell us if there would be any hope or any purpose in either Jim or me taking the instrument's place as instrument by attempting the trance work ourselves? Answer: I am Ra. This information is on the borderline of infringement upon free will. We shall, however, assume your desire to constitute permission to speak slightly beyond limits set by Confederation guidelines, shall we say. At this space-time nexus, neither the one known as Don nor the one known as Jim is available for this working. The one known as Don, by, shall we say, practicing the mechanics of contact and service to others by means of the channeling, as you call it, would in a certain length of your time become able to do this working. The one known as Jim would find it difficult to become a channel of this type without more practice also over a longer period of time. Then we should have to experiment with the harmonics developed by this practice. This is true in both cases. Question 38.2. Questioner: backtracking just a little bit today, I would like to know if the reason nuclear energy was brought into this density 40 or so years ago had anything to do with giving the entities who were here who had caused the destruction of Moldek another chance to use nuclear energy peacefully rather than destructively. Answer: I am Ra. This is incorrect in that it places cart before horse, as your people say. The desire for this type of information attracted this data to your people. It was not given for a reason from outside influences, rather it was desired by your peoples. From this point forward your reasoning is correct and that entities had desired the second chance which you mentioned. Question 38.3. Questioner, what was the mechanism for fulfilling the desire for the information regarding nuclear energy? Answer, I am Ra. As we understand your query, the mechanism was what you may call inspiration. Question 38.4. Questioner, would this inspiration be an entity impressing the person desiring the information with thoughts? Would this be the mechanism of inspiration? Answer, I am Ra. The mechanism of inspiration involves an extraordinary faculty of desire or will to know or to receive in a certain area, accompanied by the ability to open to and trust in what you may call intuition. Question 38.5. Questioner, could you tell me how each of the rays, red through violet, would appear in a perfectly balanced and undistorted entity? Answer, I am Ra. We cannot tell you this, for each balance is perfect and each unique. We do not mean to be obscure. Let us offer an example. In a particular entity, let us use as an example a wanderer, the rays may be viewed as extremely even, red, orange, yellow. The green ray is extremely bright. This is, shall we say, balanced by a dimmer indigo. Between these two the point of balance resides, the blue ray of the communicator sparkling in strength above the ordinary. In the violet ray we see this unique spectrograph, if you will, and at the same time the pure violet surrounding the whole, this in turn, surrounded by that which mixes the red and violet ray, indicating the integration of mind, body and spirit, this surrounded in turn by the vibratory pattern of this entity's true density. This description may be seen to be both unbalanced and in perfect balance. The latter understanding is extremely helpful in dealing with other selves. The ability to feel blockages is useful only to the healer. There is not properly a tiny fraction of judgment when viewing a balance in colors. Of course, when we see many of the energy plexi weakened and blocked, we may understand that an entity has not yet grasped the baton and begun the race. However, the potentials are always there. Or the rays fully balanced are there and waiting to be activated. Perhaps another way to address your query is this: in the fully potentiated entity the rays mount one upon the other with equal vibratory brilliance and scintillating sheen until the surrounding color is white. This is what you may call potentiated balance in third density. Question 38.6. Questioner, is it possible for a third density planet to form a social memory complex which operates in third density? Answer, I am Ra. It is possible only in the latter or seventh portion of such a density when entities are harmoniously readying for graduation. Question 38.7. Questioner, could you give me an example of a planet of this nature, both a third density service to others type and a third density service to self type at this level of attainment? Answer, I am Ra. As far as we are aware, there are no negatively oriented third density social memory complexes. Positively oriented social memory complexes of third density are not unheard of but quite rare. However, an entity from the star Sirius planetary body has approached this planetary body twice. This entity is late third density and is part of a third density social memory complex. This has been referred to in the previous material. The social memory complex is properly a fourth density phenomenon. Question 38.8. Questioner, I was wondering if that particular social memory complex from the Sirius star evolved from trees. Answer, I am Ra. This approaches correctness. Those second density vegetation forms which graduated into third density upon this planet bearing the name of dog were close to the tree as you know it. Question 38.9. Questioner, I was also wondering, since action of a bellicose nature is impossible as far as I understand vegetation, would they not have the advantage as they move into third density from second to not carry a racial memory of a bellicose nature and therefore develop a more harmonious society and accelerate their evolution in this nature? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. However, to become balanced and begin to polarize properly, it is then necessary to investigate movements of all kinds, especially bellicosity. Question 38.10. Questioner, I am assuming, then, that their investigations of bellicosity were primarily of the type that they extracted from Hickson's memory rather than warfare among themselves? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Entities of this heritage would find it nearly impossible to fight. Indeed, their studies of movements of all kinds is their form of meditation due to the fact that their activity is upon the level of what you would call a meditation and thus must be balanced, just as your entities need constant moments of meditation to balance your activities. Question 38.11. Questioner: I believe that this is an important point for us in understanding the balancing aspect of meditation, since we have here its antithesis in another type of evolution. These entities moved, we are told by Charlie Hickson, without moving their legs. I am assuming that they used a principle that is somewhat similar to the principle of movement of your crystal bells in the movement of their physical vehicles. Is this correct? Answer: I am Ra. This is partially incorrect. Question 38.12. Questioner: I am assuming that their method of movement is not a function of mechanical leverage such as ours, but a direct function of the mind somehow connected with the magnetic action of a planet. Is this right? Answer: I am Ra. This is largely correct. It is an electromagnetic phenomenon which is controlled by thought impulses of a weak electrical nature. Question 38.13. Questioner: would their craft have been visible to anyone on our planet in that area at that time? Is it of a third density material like this chair? Answer: I am Ra. This is correct. Please ask one more full question before we close, as this instrument has low vital energy at this space-time. Question 38.14. Questioner: could you give me some idea of what conditions are like on a fourth density negative or service to self planet? Answer: I am Ra. The graduation into fourth density negative is achieved by those beings who have consciously contacted intelligent infinity through the use of red, orange, and yellow rays of energy. Therefore, the planetary conditions of fourth density negative include the constant alignment and realignment of entities in efforts to form dominant patterns of combined energy. The early fourth density is one of the most intensive struggle. When the order of authority has been established and all have fought until convinced that each is in the proper placement for power structure, the social memory complex begins. Always the fourth density effect of telepathy and the transparency of thought are attempted to be used for the sake of those at the apex of the power structure. This, as you may see, is often quite damaging to the further polarization of fourth density negative entities, for the further negative polarization can come about only through group effort. As the fourth density entities manage to combine, they then polarize through such services to self as those offered by the Crusaders of Orion. You may ask more specific questions in the next session of working. Are there any brief queries before we leave this instrument? Question 38.15. Questioner: I would just ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact. Answer: I am Ra. All is well. We leave you in the love and light of the One Infinite Creator. Go forth rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the One Creator. Adonai.